Do you feel like, being in a ghost city, in a digital ghost city, where like there's lots of infrastructure built, but there's like no life inside?
Projects like EOS, Definity, Zilliqa, and OneChains and others creating their own consensus modules, whereas projects like site layer 2 scaling solutions like Matic, Loom, or other Plasma Lightning solutions, they're creating side chains and off-chain solutions to kind of ensure that the main chain can be kept light relatively. Right. We believe that all these different scaling solutions at some point have either compromised on security or decentralization, or these layer 2 solutions have made the networks like pretty specific to the layer 1s which they are built on, and the layer 1s have eventually made the ecosystem pretty much fragmented. There's one layer which has been pretty much untapped yet in the blockchain space with Matic, wherein we are trying to use our testnet on Matic right now, kind of talking to several other projects like Casper Labs, Tomo Chain, Harmony, and many others, and trying to seek the possible opportunities that wherein we can collab with each other.
So Nilatpal, great to see you, man. Great to see you again. I've seen you so many times already in so many places.
Pleasure.
Right, so Marlin Network, you guys are in Seoul. It's been a very, very busy week. We finally got about, 20-25 minutes from your busy schedule. Thanks for giving us this time, first of all.
Thank you so much, Oleg, for inviting us for the show.
Cool. For those who are probably not following you, which is strange for us apparently in the blockchain space, because you're probably one of the jewels right now for the blockchain lab, for Binance Labs, of course, Binance Launchpad. Tell us a few words about what you guys are all about. Marlin Protocol, what is it?
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much, Oleg, for inviting us to the show, and I've been talking to you for quite a while now. Like, we have been in discussion about the projects in different chat groups and in different platforms. I met you in Singapore as well. We had some great discussions there. So so Marlin essentially is a layer 0 scaling platform. We feel that the blockchain ecosystem has scaled quite enough over the years, and we have seen several projects in the space working on layer 1 solutions, layer 2 solutions, maybe projects like EOS, Definity, Zilliqa, and OneChains and others creating their own consensus modules, whereas projects like layer 2 scaling solutions like Matic, Loom, or other Plasma Lightning solutions, they're creating side chains and off-chain solutions to kind of ensure that the main chain can be kept light relatively. Right. So overall, the throughput and the main chain can be increased. Now, we believe that all these different scaling solutions at some point have either compromised on security or decentralization, or these layer 2 solutions have made the networks like pretty specific to the layer 1s which they are built on, and the layer 1s have eventually made the ecosystem pretty much fragmented, because there are so many different layer 1s now. Which one do you adapt? Which one do you work on?
Exactly.
We feel the network, the overall ecosystem, as we progress, is going to kind of consolidate, and different projects are going to get either merged in, or maybe alliances are going to be formed, or maybe some projects are going to kind of wither off with time. But all of this, having said all of this, we feel that there's one layer which has been pretty much untapped yet in the blockchain space, and that's what we call as the layer 0, or the network layer. Now, to help you visualize, the network layer comes in as the bottom layer for blockchains, wherein the peer-to-peer propagation of blocks happen. The consensus layer is wherein the blocks are eventually agreed upon, and finally the mining takes place. And it's the application layer where the blocks are being stored. Okay. Now, Marlin comes in at the layer 0 platform, the network layer, wherein we are trying to create a decentralized networking stack which is incentive compatible and is going to allow private network-like performance over the public internet, right? So what's the benefit of it? We eventually want to ensure that all these blockchains which are scaling through different models get a scale at the base layer, which is the network layer, which is right now pretty much a bottleneck for all these blockchains. Whatever their scaling layers are at 1 or 2, they eventually bottleneck at layer 0, wherein they're using a model called Gossip Protocol. So that's essentially where Marlin comes in, and we are kind of creating a much more user-friendly, efficient and optimized network stack, which is going to give a much better performance to all these blockchains at layer 0 and going to help them scale. So we are going to add a scaling factor to whatever scaling limits they have achieved so far. That's what Marlin is.
Okay, and you comparing yourself more or less, or competing or comparing yourself to your peers, like who would be the projects that you are around with, surrounding yourself with?
So let's start with comparing, or I would say collaborating. So to begin with, we are collaborating with almost all blockchains, because as I said, like, we are a layer 0, which is like an agnostic layer, and it doesn't really care whether you are a Ethereum on layer 1 or a Matic on layer 2, or maybe a privacy solution on layer 2. We can come in for all. We are an agnostic layer. So at a collaborative level, we are working with all projects. We are in fact tied up with Matic, wherein we are trying to use our testnet on Matic right now. We're already doing a testnet in-house on Litecoin at the moment. We are also kind of talking to several other projects like Casper Labs, Tomo Chain, Harmony, and many others, and trying to seek the possible opportunities that wherein we can collab with each other. Now, having said that, we have a few projects which are a bit similar to us, like Dyson Network, and then we've got Blockstrout as one of the potential projects which people are comparing us with. But then we feel that we are pretty much different from all the existing players which are out there. And specifically Blockstrout, which people possibly compare us with, we feel that Blockstrout is creating a network layer pretty much similar to us, but then that network stack is not really decentralized. That network stack is such wherein the relay nodes are being hosted by Blockstrout themselves. So it eventually kind of makes the network more like a centralized architecture. Whereas for us, we are on one hand, like we are giving the optimizations to the network stack, but also ensuring that the network is not centralized. We are ensuring the decentralization component is intact in the network layer. So that's how we are different. And to put it very simply to you, would you go for a Bitcoin or a Ripple? I think you would go for a Bitcoin, right? Of course, yeah. Because it's decentralized. That's the whole objective of this game. So we are pretty much there. Like we are creating an optimized network plus making it decentralized.
I see. Okay. If we touch a little bit on the team, apparently when you go down into this very deep tech solutions, you must have a very deep background for the team who is doing this.
I think it's pretty relevant that for such a tech heavy product, the team has to be pretty strong, and we take a big pride on our team and even our advisors, because we feel that it's only the advisors which can show you as far as you essentially can grow. So to begin with, the team is essentially comprised of people from MIT and Stanford and IIT Mumbai, which is again in colloquial terms considered the Stanford of India.
Exactly.
It's very difficult to get there. So most of our people have done their engineering from IIT Mumbai and are currently studying either at MIT or Stanford. So the core research is happening in these two institutes, and then we are also trying to now set up a dev shop back in India. Okay. As far as the core team is considered, we have got our CEO Siddharth, who is the founder of this project, and he is an ex-Zilliqa. He used to be the core developer of Zilliqa before he switched tracks and came to Marlin and started this. He is again an IIT Mumbai graduate and worked with Adobe in the past. I've got quite a few patents in his name. Has done research on multiple subject matters and even got some accolades from European government as well for his research. Then we've got Pratyaksh, who is the CTO of the project, and he is at Stanford. He is currently kind of a pretty integral part of the blockchain club at Stanford and has worked with Facebook, Pinterest and other companies and doing pretty phenomenal network research at Stanford right now. The core researcher is Pratish, who is again a gold medalist at IIT Mumbai and currently a pretty recognized scholar at MIT. And specifically he's working under Professor Hari Balakrishna, who happens to be one of our advisors. And for those who don't know Hari Balakrishna, he is the chair professor of networking at MIT and is running his own company called Cambridge Telematics, which recently raised about $500 million of funds. So he's also advisor to us. And I'm there managing the business side of things, wherein I come with a pretty strong business experience, having worked with Deutsche Bank, Accenture Consulting across multiple clients, and with a MBA master's background in finance, marketing, and consulting. So, and then we've got a set of researchers and a set of developers. Right. We're also creating a dev shop in India right now because we want to kind of draw a fine balance between the research and the development arm. And we see it's a huge potential market right now. It's coming up, and we being Indians, we know the market very well. So we want to tap in that market as well. And there's an immense amount of talent there. So we're tapping in that space as well. And I think the advisors are pretty strong. I already said Hari is one of our advisors. And then we've got Rogelio Choi. Rogelio is essentially the ex-CEO of BitTorrent. I believe you might be aware of BitTorrent network. Yeah. So he was the ex-CEO, he was the founder of BitTorrent. Like he was the great grandfather of peer-to-peer network.
You have quite a good dream team over there, I must say.
Yeah, so he's also helping us. Then we've got some deep tech guys, apart from them, some professors from MIT and UC Berkeley are helping us. So yeah, so we've got a strong team there.
Cool. You've mentioned something. Well, basically, you touched about. You touched on the topic where you said that, hey, we see a lot of potential in blockchain. And it's so funny that during this week of blockchain here in Korea, I've seen two opinions. So one of them is pretty much very opportunistic and saying, hey, you know, there's big waves coming, there's something going to happen. And there's other opinions of people who are saying that, look, blockchain has no limits, to be honest. And the reason it's not booming is because it's not needed to, you know, to the extent that we are really hoping it to blossom, right? So it most likely it would stay within the same practical elements like your, I don't know, big data, deep learning, AI, and whatever else. Say if you use your Google Maps, which uses all this big data and other, you know, application. I mean, well, basically the technologies,
the
right?
database at the back end.
Exactly, yeah. So you don't see how it's working, right? It's under the hood. So blockchain, it eventually would be the same sort of solution, and so our expectations are all basically euphoric.
Okay.
What do you think?
It's an interesting thought, actually. So yeah, I have also one polarized opinion on that front. Like, I particularly feel that it's a relevant question when one says that it's nothing else but a data structure, or where you're going to store data. So how is it so much different? How is it such a big industry that you're kind of making it to be?
Right.
So for me, blockchain is more of an ideology, which is kind of driving all the various adoptions that are happening around. The core ideology is around decentralization, wherein the power is within the hands of people. Now, one might say, I don't really care if the power is in my hand or someone else's hand. As long as I can use an app, I'm happy with it.
Right.
So from that point of view, I feel that blockchain need not be a model wherein people need to understand the core depth of the technology.
Right.
For people, for retail public, it should ideally be an user-friendly app, the way they are using Google right now.
Pretty much the same one.
It should be ideally the same.
Right.
But the underlying principles of it is what really drives all the euphoria. And I think the underlying principle is a pretty big model in itself. Mm-hmm. Now think about it. Right now, the entire world and the GDP that we see around it is built on a centralized architecture. Like the whole GDP of the world is on a centralized architecture. Now, the valuation, if you talk about valuations, if you talk about numbers, then there's not really any peer which you can compare a blockchain tech, which you can ideally compare a blockchain tech with. Or there's not really any comparable model or industry which you can compare it with. So, for some people, they compare it with data structure entities. For some people, they compare it with maybe some applications. Mm-hmm. I compare it with more like a fundamental principle, wherein you're moving from centralization to decentralization. And as much as the centralized ecosystem holds value, if you can essentially translate from this to this ecosystem essentially is going to hold as much value as the centralized ecosystem holds. So the sky is the limit. Or in this case, possibly the entire centralized ecosystem GDP is the limit over here as well, right? Because you're eventually migrating from this to this, right? So as far as valuations or numbers are concerned, I don't really focus too much on those, because I feel the ideology in itself is too big to kind of do the translation in itself. But then I think it's a valid concern shown by all, and it's essentially shown because the market cycles are such wherein for any technology when it evolves, there are going to be cycles, and this is one such phase wherein people are a bit skeptical about things. But if the ideology has to survive, then the cycles are again going to come up, and I believe in it. As I said, I have a polarized view. I believe in it very strongly, and I feel it's again going to come up, and again people are going to kind of rush in with the money. But I think money is just a number which kind of gets translated from the core, and the core is strong over here. Decentralization core is pretty strong for me, and I strongly believe in it.
Sweet. Okay. The other thing that is happening in the market at the moment is apparently the vast amount of protocols, let's call them this way, right? This year is just the year of protocols, I guess, and exchanges apparently. So. And there's different layers, there's different approaches, there's competing teams, there's cooperating teams, and so on and so forth. Do you feel like, being in a ghost city, in a digital ghost city, where like there's lots of infrastructure built, but there's like no life inside? Yeah. So, if so, why is this happening? And what do you think is going to be like the fresh air that is going to breathe in some life into it, the whole thing?
I think the precise reason why these apps are not getting adoption are multifold. There are in fact 2 to 3 major reasons. One is the government. because the regulatory landscape is not really aligned to suit the retail investors. They are pretty skeptical about how they should approach a blockchain app or a crypto app, and they're not really sure if token economics being part of it is something that they should ideally get involved with or not. So that's where one form of skepticism is coming in the minds of normal retail investors, which is kind of stopping people from getting in. Two, people yet are kind of focused more on infra, focus more on protocols. They're giving all these difficult technicalities to the retail public, which they're not really able to consume well. So for them, it kind of appears to be something which is rocket science. So they want to get into it, but they don't know how. And even if they know how, they're not sure whether it's going to be user friendly for them or not. So this is another major challenge which is coming in. So I think to ensure that the next wave of fresh air comes into the space, it has to be driven through adoption, user adoption. And user adoption can only happen when you kind of abstract out all the difficulties and make them just see what they need to see. Just give to them what they need to solve, or what they need to kind of work with. So, and that's something which is being currently pretty strongly worked upon by several applications. And many of these projects who we are collaborating with, like Matic Network is one of our partners. Matic is a project from India, another project from India. They did really well in the IEO launchpad that they did last a few months back. So they're one of our partners, and I think their focus is pretty strong on this user adoption specifically. They're trying to make sure that the applications that people uses, leave aside all the blockchain at the back end. They not need to see any of that. They just need to see that the applications are easy to use, and there should be no friction as far as adoption is concerned. So I think they are working really strongly on that front. There are quite a few other projects which we are right now in talks with, like Tomo Chain is one such project doing a really good job in Vietnamese market. They're also doing something similar. They're trying to make the user adoption journey pretty simple. So that's one side of things, and then there's another side which is the business side of or the institution side. Even there, the companies still, like, since we mostly kind of focus on decentralization, so there's not much of economics that has yet come out of these implementations. So once these companies starts to realize the profit numbers, the ROIs, more and more people are going to join into this scheme, and these ROI numbers are going to come over time. You cannot just see an ROI of an abstract concept. It needs to kind of, you need to have those multiples as well. So as the industry is kind of evolving with time, and I think it's a big industry, massive scale. As it's evolving with time, things are coming up. User adoption is one major chunk of the story. Institutions understanding the ROI is another major aspect of things, and I believe it's also a market cycle as well. So multiple things combined together. The moment we get on the upward side of the market, again, investors are all going to come in. So I think it's a combination of all of these. But as a project, we are focused on build. We are focused on adoption. We don't really care too much about what the retail public think at this point, because one day down the line, obviously it's going to again turn back. And if you're there, you're there. You can capitalize the market once you're there.
So thinking forward, say 5 years from now, what do you see happening? I mean, would there still be this dozens and dozens of infrastructure protocol solutions, or there's going to be, your Googles and the Amazons that would just start to blow up and actually consolidate some of these areas? Would there be dApps maybe in some areas that would just sort of attract some of the users, the Libras, the Telegrams, the Kakaos, or something else?
It's a pretty interesting question again over there. So these are long questions and needs elaborative answers, and I have got some strong opinions on each of these. But anyways, coming back to your question specifically. Yeah. So the thing is, like, about fat layers and thin layer concepts, right? Like previously, when the world was more centralized, the value was more accrued at the upper layer, the application layers, whereas the fat layer was pretty small because you cannot really capitalize or monetize much there. You essentially monetize the application layer, and that's where the centralized entities used to come in. Now the decentralization or the tokenomics concepts has made it more easier for even the fat layer or the protocol layers to monetize their value, right? Like, think about internet has no value in itself. It's not monetized. But then if someone can create a decentralized internet, it's monetizable, right? So now that people have realized that a protocol or an architecture or an infrastructure can also be a business model in itself, and you can monetize it by even decentralizing things through tokenomics, I think that's an area which has become pretty big now. The last 2-3 years, we have seen that protocol players become quite big, and most of the money has come into the protocol play in itself. The dApps are yet to kind of get adoption. But again, having said that, I think these are phases. Like in blockchain, this is how I feel it's going to evolve. There's going to be a fat layer, then a thin layer, then another fat layer, then another thin layer. It's going to evolve over time. So we've seen fat layers being built by Ethereum and some other coins in 2015-16, on which the applications were built on 17. Right now, once the apps were built, there was again a need of another layer of fat layer, protocol layer. So that's again being built now in 18, 19. I feel maybe 2021 would be again the year for applications to be built. And then again, you're going to see some more lacuna at the infra layer. So again, a new set of protocols are going to be built. So I think it's going to be a evolutionary process wherein this fat thin combination is going to come up. Over the period of time, obviously it's going to be the users which is going to use the things, and possibly the protocols are going to be there. Maybe quite a few of them are going to be there, which essentially would be monetizable by the organizations which are building it. So there would be a good mix of it. Applications for sure are going to be the user play and the retail play, but protocols in itself would also have a value to itself. So 5-10 years down the line, I think it's going to be a good mix of the two, and protocols would have a business case in itself.
Very interesting. This is probably the first time I hear this this vision of how the industry would be evolving. So thanks for that. Tell me how Marlin is being evolving right now. Like, what are your steps? What are the next things that we should be expecting from you guys?
Sure. So the last few months have been pretty exciting for us. Like essentially, the day we got the incubation from Binance Labs has kind of really turned tails, and it's been a lot of attention that we've got from masses across the globe, from projects across the globe. And as we all know, that Binance is one of the major drivers of this industry. So having them on your side kind of obviously helps you kind of streamline and get a direction as well on your journey. So with Binance coming in, we have further got support from several other backers like NGC, Arrington, Kennedy Capital, DHVC, Electric, and many others.
Right.
And we are really happy that and very, very proud that those guys are kind of backing us now and believe in our vision, overall vision. Now, last 4 months, there's a tremendous leap that we have taken, not only from the backing side, but also from the development belief, the team's belief in the product in itself side, and also the kind of technical developments that we are having in-house. So we've already had a testnet like on the Litecoin network, which has kind of shown really promising results overall, which is already live for public to view. We are also working very closely with Matic on the development side with Matic, and trying to kind of implement our network layer on their layer 2 solution and see what kind of additional benefits we can provide to their scaling limits. We are, as I said, this Korea has been a pretty strong conference so far, and we've got really good projects to kind of speak with, know their vision, have some kind of synergies with them. There have been some projects we are very closely discussing with, like Casper Labs, as I said, like Tomo Chain, like we are talking with Harmony, Taurus, and quite a few others, and trying to see where exactly and how exactly we can kind of combine the two networks, like our network and their modules. And I see the next 6 months as very promising as far as all these relationships that we are building now, and possibly in Japan, and then SF Blockchain Week in itself. I think we are really getting the global landscape as far as projects are concerned. Now, from project standpoint, I think we are quite comfortable on where we stand, the development aspects of it, and even the business development side is also going hand in hand, wherein all these projects are talking to us, they are willing to implement us, work on our modules. And I think not only that, we are also creating our own ecosystems as well, wherein we are running lots of hackathons, meetups, like in Korea itself, we did 2 to 3 meetups, one with Binance Labs, one with Matic, and a couple of others. In Japan also, we have got a few meetups lined up. So this essentially gives us the mileage to reach out to the developer community, to the user community, to the applications which are going to be built on us, and the protocols who are going to use us. So I think overall, we are trying to kind of tap into the ecosystem from different verticals, and we believe that we are on the right track. So that's pretty much it that I can say.
Nice one. Imagine again 3-5 years from now, within your project, every milestone that you sort of pointed out at the moment, they are all reached. Can you describe this picture? So, like everything that you wanted Matic to achieve, that you guys did achieve this.
Yeah. So there would be a couple of like again, I would like to split it into the verticals that I kind of defined or started with.
Sure.
So one vertical would certainly be the adoption, the protocol adoption, wherein we being the base layer, we would ideally want to work with multiple blockchains, and being an agnostic solution, we want to give scale to all blockchains, right? So we would ideally want to have at least 10 blockchains working on us as we progress, so that kind of gives us the confidence that yes, our solution is relevant. And once we get a mass adoption, I think then we have a compounding effect on the adoption story. So the initial target would be within a year or 1.5 to get at least 10 good blockchains to use us and scale themselves on the adoption side. On the developer side, we want to ensure that developers across the globe knows us, number one, because this play is global, blockchain play is global, and being a network infrastructure, which is like you are not just located in India, you're located everywhere, not just in SF or India, you're located globally, your nodes are there everywhere. So we need to have developer adoption and user awareness across the globe. We need to ensure that the mining pools which are currently doing their mining and for different networks also come and join us and be a partner to this network, because we eventually need nodes to form our relay networks, right? So miners and stakers need to kind of come and use us overall. And I think finally, as a project and as a brand, we want to make sure that we eventually stand out to be a partner to some of the greatest projects. Like our ideal target would be to get Ethereum working with Marlin and ensure that they get the scalability that they ideally should have. So that's the final vision. And if maybe some other bigger blockchain comes up, maybe we would like to work with all of them.
Beautiful. Well, let's hope, fingers crossed that you guys reach these targets much sooner than expected, and all the best of luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Oleg. Thanks for
Cheers.
listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool.